this unconditional love. I'm starting to feel like we have a quasi-family that we're creating, and I'm allowed to be exactly who I am, and I don't have to apologize or make excuses why I'm different.
India's fourth largest city has experienced its heaviest rainfall in more than 100 years. With the rain not letting up, much of the city is now underwater. These pictures sent to us by local residents show the extent of the devastation. Navigating through the flooded streets is difficult and at times dangerous, leaving many areas cut off.
One of India's biggest cities is submerged. For many people in Chennai in the southern state of Tamil Nadu, rooftops are the safest and driest place to be. After days of heavy rain and flooding, food is scarce. The only way to get essentials to those stranded is from the air. This is the worst flooding to hit Tamil Nadu in 100 years. Coastal areas were drenched with a month's worth of rain in just a few days. Aerial pictures show the extent of the devastation.
Este es un lavadero. Y nosotros muchas veces ya nos fuimos a quejarnos de ello, porque cada vez que llovía nosotros teníamos los inundamientos acá. Su alcantarilla que estaba acá estaba roto y no íbamos y no nos hacía así, no vamos a ir, no vamos a arreglar, y nunca vinieron a arreglar y ahora nosotros pensamos que la alcantarilla explotó por la cantidad.
Recuerdo que hace apenas una semana la adolescente y su familia se mudaron a 2 piezas ubicadas en la zona del Bañado Norte, conocida como 3 de Mayo, camino al Clumbigua, precisamente para huir de las inundaciones que tomaron.
The River Eden normally meanders through this small Cumbrian town of Appleby. Now it is lapping at the doors and sweeping away the belongings of the townsfolk. As it blasted eastwards across the northern UK, Storm Desmond brought a month's rainfall in less than 24 hours. The high hills of the Cumbrian Lake District already average more rainfall than the rest of England, but its picturesque towns are more accustomed to being inundated with tourists than swamped with floodwater. The village of Braithwaite was cut off by the collapse of the road bridge into the village. Elsewhere, rescuers worked house to house to check for stranded homeowners. In the town of Keswick alone, more than 100 people were evacuated. Fire and rescue chiefs described the situation as exceptionally challenging. Power supplies were also seriously affected in around 60,000 homes after the water breached flood defences around a major electricity substation. An emergency government meeting has been called to organise the responses for the worst affected.
But you can see this lies just north of Afghanistan. It did register 7.2, which is a pretty significant earthquake. So much so that shakes were felt in Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. This is obviously something we'll continue to monitor throughout the day.
You want to talk about a nasty storm? Look at this one that's been going on in Iceland. This is the worst weather Iceland has seen in 25 years. That's saying a lot. They get a lot of nasty storms up there. This storm that hit Monday had brutal wind, one gust over 160 miles an hour, and then hurricane force wind was picked up at about 33 weather stations across the country. And that wind even broke some of the anemometers. That's what's actually used to measure the wind. So, as you would imagine, we had shattered windows, roofs torn off of buildings, 2 boats even sank in Reykjavik harbor, but luckily, there have been no reports of deaths. Now, of course, schools are closed in many parts of the country, and all domestic flights were canceled on Tuesday morning.
Powerful storms washed out roads in Oregon and Washington. They caused mudslides and forced evacuations. The rain is expected to intensify this week. Flash flood watches are in effect.
A landslide in Portland pushed trees and mud towards cars and forced the closure of Highway 30. The relentless rainfall sent rivers and creeks surging above flood levels. It opened up this massive sinkhole in Gresham and wind gusts as strong as 40 miles per hour toppled trees.
Almost a week's worth of rain sent rivers tumbling over their banks in Oregon. Dozens of cars were left submerged when the swollen Tualatin River near Portland cascaded into a scrapyard. The damage in the Pacific Northwest is adding up. At least $20 million worth in Oregon and Washington state, much of it to highways left impassable by landslides. The powerful storms are causing problems at sea. The Coast Guard has shut down all ports along a more than 500-mile stretch of Pacific coastline.
100,000 people have been evacuated in eastern and central parts of the Philippines as powerful typhoon Melor is approaching the nation. Classes have been suspended in 8 provinces and at least 40 domestic flights were canceled. Nearly 8,000 passengers, 62 vehicles, and 552 rolling cargos were also stranded due to rough sea conditions. Weather Bureau said the typhoon was bringing winds of 150 kilometers per hour near the center and gusts of 185 kilometers per hour, carrying heavy to intense rains within its 300-kilometer diameter. It made landfall Monday morning in Batag Island in eastern Philippines, and a second landfall was expected in Sorsogon province.
Emergency service has tonight issued an extreme heat alert, warning people to seek shelter and keep cool, with temperatures set to soar in coming days. Lightning strikes today, sparking dangerous fires south of Adelaide.
As the clouds rolled in, they took the edge off the heat, but brought with them thunderstorms and lightning that sparked 15 fires, including this one at Meadows, which spread to a hay shed, causing $100,000 damage.
Here's a look at golf ball size hail in Sydney, Australia from a rare tornado that touched down Wednesday morning. Now, this was all a part of a line of supercell thunderstorms that were moving through that did cause some extreme flash flooding as well. This even prompted somebody on Instagram to write "swimming anyone" because they were looking at so much water. The eastern suburbs of Sydney, they were hit the hardest. And you can see there, this is the tornado damage. All the trees that are littering the street. Now, their town of Kurnell, this is a suburb. Look at all that property damage. They were certainly hit hard by that tornado, where there were 120-mile-per-hour winds being reported. Now, believe it or not, there were no injuries reported, but some 6,000 homes were left without power. Peak tornado season in Australia is from November to January, and Australia is experiencing an El Niño weather pattern, which usually means extreme storms and floods.
It used to be a busy industrial park in one of China's biggest cities, full of factories, shops and homes. Now that's all been buried under a thick layer of mud.
This is the rescue site of the landslide in the southern city of Shenzhen. Over 30 buildings at Hengtaiyu, Liuxi and Dejichong industrial parks are buried by excavated soil and construction waste, which are over 10 meters thick. The landslide covered an area of 380,000 square meters. More than 1,000 rescuers are involved in the operation, including armed police, transportation officials, and firemen. Rescue work is challenged by the loose and muddy landslide mass. Machinery drivers need to consider both the safety of the buried victims and possible secondary collapses. Rescue workers use cutting machines to dismantle concrete structures before sending crew members into the debris piles. They've been working day and night to save lives.
Last week, followed by more rain this week, and that's given way to several landslides, especially on the Oregon coast. We have team coverage of this widespread flooding. It's affecting people from the metro area down to Corvallis and especially on the coast.
First, Brent Weisberg is at the scene of a house swallowed up by a landslide and a sinkhole.
Flames moved fast, fueled by strong easterly winds. Straight into the path of a Kenwick home, its roof ripped away by the heat. Just down the road, storage tankers destroyed, spewing black smoke, flames out of control.
We've got confirmation of one derelict property. I believe there's another shed. Further extensive damage is unconfirmed.
The blaze started just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. Tonkin Highway was still open southbound, flames perilously close to cars as water bombers swooped in.
The country's capital have also melted. Before Tuesday's high of 7 degrees, the highest temperature in Moscow for December 22nd was recorded in 1936 at 4.4 degrees Celsius. The record-breaking temperatures are expected to continue throughout the week.
Wild winter weather is taking aim at millions. Pacific storms are slamming Washington, Oregon, and California.
The heavy snow is complicating travel through the mountain passes. Several inches fell overnight in Northern California, and there are flood watches as rain drenches the lowlands. John Blackstone is in Mill Valley, California, just north of San Francisco.
Parts of the South and Midwest are destroyed after an overnight outbreak of violent tornadoes. Officials fear the death toll could rise. Dozens are hurt. Mississippi suffered the worst of the assault. The Storm Prediction Center says at least 14 tornadoes touched down across the state Wednesday. One of those killed in Mississippi, a 7-year-old boy who was in a car with his family in Holly Springs. This video was shot by a driver a few miles away near Como. Watch as a twister shoves a tractor-trailer off the road.
Trees are being killed off by a mysterious disease. Officials aren't sure how to stop it. Right now, all officials have been able to do is identify it as a new fungus. It's currently only impacting the Big Island, but DLNR says it's worried that if they don't figure out how to stop the disease, it could eventually spread statewide.
The Pakistan Meteorological Department said the quake was a magnitude 6.9, while the U.S. Geological Survey reported it at 6.2. Pakistan's Urdu TV channel Geo says the city of Peshawar in the Khyber province has reported at least 37 casualties, but there have so far been no reports of damage or casualties in Afghanistan or Tajikistan.
Southern part of South America, driving more than 150,000 people from their homes and spending Christmas looking for higher ground. In the city of Concordia in northeast Argentina, it's being called the worst flooding in a half-century as non-stop overnight rains forced the Uruguay River to flood its banks. Thousands forced to evacuate.
Unfortunately, 8 people were killed. A couple different towns along about a 55-mile path with this particular tornado. And this was one of at least 5 tornadoes that we had in the southern plains yesterday. Now, in Garland, Texas, this is one of the spots that was most heavily affected. At least 4 people were killed. Police are saying that dozens of cars were actually picked up off the interstate and then tossed onto a nearby road. That's how strong this thing was. Then it went on to affect places like Copeville, Texas, where at least 2 people were killed when a gas station was destroyed by high wind. That's according to the fire department. So several homes destroyed, many others damaged. Weather Service will be doing surveys. People will be rebuilding. And we do have another chance for severe weather. It's going to shift a little bit farther toward the east. Once again, a chance for tornadoes. Won't be as bad in Dallas today.
Currently, there are over 400 firefighters on the line. We will continue through tonight with day shift taking over tomorrow after briefing. We've made tremendous progress today. We're expecting some winds tomorrow. Region-wide, we have concern with fire weather. As you recall, historically, this time of year is that season for us. And so we're cautiously optimistic that we've taken care of this incident. However, county-wide, we're keeping a close eye on the day-to-day operation.